Hey everyone, welcome back to the Rift Waters Fish Room for another awesome species spotlight. And today is a really exciting one because today we're looking at a cool little Victorian cichlid. We don't see many Victorian cichlids in the hobby anymore, which is a total shame. And I don't keep many myself either. I have a lot of, Malawians and Madagascans, as friends of the channel will be familiar with. So I'm really excited to have this Victorian cichlid. Most Victorians are actually quite endangered in the wild in their native habitats. So if any of you find this interesting and want to check out Victorian cichlids, I highly recommend it. But let's go ahead and dive on in and talk about this awesome fish. Today we are talking about the Pundamilia macrocephala, also known as the Python Island Hap. And it's a very unique species. You don't see a lot of fish with all black bodies. And this is a deep midnight black. And it's beautifully trimmed with those red fins. It's very attractive aquarium fish. I have it in here in this tank set against a black background with light gray rocks. And I kind of wanted to experiment with the setup in order to see what colors make the fish pop the most. If I were to try this again, I would probably keep the black background, but I would sub out the gray rock for a little lighter color, maybe all white rock, and I would use, a more typical white or tan colored sand. I think that would really help these fish stand out a little bit better. So there's just a little recommendation for you if you ever decide to keep this species yourself. But let's talk a bit about care requirements. This is a very small cichlid. The males will max out about 3 inches, and the females will stay close to 2.5 inches, maybe even a little smaller. So it's a great option to consider for anyone who is interested in African cichlids, but maybe doesn't have the big tank that most African cichlids typically require. You can successfully keep a group of these fish long term in a 40-gallon aquarium, maybe even as small as a 29 tall. I wouldn't put them in a 20-gallon, at least not long term, unless you only had maybe a male and a couple females. That would probably work out. But if you want a group of these fish, I would definitely shoot for that 40-gallon. That's what I keep my fish in. Now, this isn't your typical 40-gallon, because this is a custom tank I built myself. It's a little bit shorter lengthwise, and it's a little bit wider and taller, but it's close, and it works out just fine. They do very well in this tank. We have a group of about, I think it's 12 or 13 fish in here, about 4 or 5 males and the rest females. That ratio does very well. As far as water requirements go, these fish are consistent with most other African cichlids. They prefer very hard water with a high pH. They do have some flexibility though. If you have softer water, you don't have to put anything in it to change your parameters too much. As long as you have a pH above probably low 7s, 7.2, they'll probably be just fine. If you have much lower than that, yeah, maybe you want to put in some crushed coral or something in the substrate to add some buffering capacity. But most of the time, you'll be able to keep these fish with your water just straight out of the tap. For temperature, I keep my fish at 77 degrees Fahrenheit, but they'll do pretty well anywhere in the 75 to 80 range. I just like to keep it right in the middle there. And beyond that, just make sure they have clean water. Make sure you're filtering the tank in accordance with the size of it and how much bioload you have. Here in this 40-gallon, I just use a large sponge filter, and that is more than sufficient. If you keep them in a bigger tank, you might upgrade to a higher capacity hang on the back filter. And then, make sure you do regular water changes. I change the water in this setup about 50% every 2 weeks, or a little bit sooner than that. But it really depends, again, on the size of the aquarium and the bioload you have in it. Breeding these fish can be a bit more tricky than other African cichlids. Not so much getting them to breed. That's pretty straightforward. Just give them a good amount of food and clean water, and have a male and female together and just add water pretty much. But because the fish are, much smaller, the females especially, it's very difficult to actually strip the eggs out of the female's mouth. So if you're going to breed them, hatch them artificially, that can be, just logistically difficult. But if you let them spit in the tank naturally, yeah, that works out just fine. And of course, the females are not the deep black that the males are. They're more of a gray color. But that's pretty much all we have for today, everyone. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you enjoyed learning about this really cool little cichlid from Lake Victoria. I definitely recommend them, and Victorian cichlids in general, to any hobbyist who wants a very unique fish and to also help with conservation efforts, because a lot of these fish are in trouble in their native environment. So go out and buy some captive bred specimens and help propagate them yourselves. But in the meantime, guys, I'll see you next time. Take it easy.